As you come into the room, you're welcome to unmute yourself and have your video playing, and we can say hi to each other. Once we get started with the conversation, I'll just ask everyone to mute themselves. And then if you, hi Jen, would like to put some questions in the chat, you're welcome to do that, and we'll get to those towards the end. Hello, hello people. Oh, look, it's Teddy. Hi, Teddy. And just wondering how everyone's doing on this lovely Thursday. I'm actually at the clay studio for the first time, and Adam is in the other room. So that's exciting. It's always nice to just wait a couple minutes because
Adam, how long are you in town?
Did you say something, Jen?
I just said, I was asking how long Adam's in town.
I'm only in town for the rest of today, and then I go back up. I've got a messy studio to clean up.
Nice. I'm excited to see the show.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back, and I couldn't have been happier to be in this space. And I think we'll talk about that as well, how the work occupies the space. I'm really, really happy.
Great.
Yeah, it seemed like a perfect amount of work for that space.
I wanted to mention that I picked up my Joshua cup from Dominique on Tuesday. So yeah. Thank you, Manhattan.
Great. That's exciting. Yeah, we still have just a few left. And we are going to be opening back up to the public July 6th. So classes and shop and gallery. If you are desperate to see Adam's show before that, I'm happy to do an appointment. So if anyone is interested, you can always email me. I'll put my email address in the chat. Okay. Gonna wait one more minute. Anybody else have a moment of joy they want to share with us today? I feel like Raymond, you got something for me?
Let's see. So many things happening, but all over Zoom. Having great conversations with other organizations and institutions and artists.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, it's been really great. Just also, yeah, just to sort of see that world out there of other artists and thinkers and museum people and art organizations and what a network it is, and something you wouldn't normally do if you were working, you know, at the clay studio, sitting at your desk, you know. So, yeah, so I love these lunch and learns because you just get to be one-on-one with the artists, and be with a bunch of people. You know.
That's nice. I feel that way too. Excellent. Well, my moment of joy, besides the huge one of actually getting to see Adam in person and watch an exhibition go up in the gallery in real life, was that the shovel went into the ground at the Clay Studio site. So that is super exciting to all of us. I see a lot of nodding heads and smiling. And so in about 14 months, knock on wood, we're gonna be doing Zoom programs from another building. No, having them in person there. So that'll be great. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We are really excited. I believe this is our 11th Lunch and Learn, and we have a few more lined up. Next week, we're going to be talking about the plans for the first exhibition in the new building, just to give everyone a little bit of a preview of all of the exciting work we're going to do in the next year as we're getting ready for that. So come back and join us. Oh, Jen Martin put something in the chat. She says, see the link below for a few quick pictures of the job site. Oh, that's very exciting. So what else is going on? We are looking forward also to, as I said, the building opening back up, and we'll have yet another new exhibition in the gallery starting on July 10th, the Clay Studio National, so take a look for that. And Josie, am I forgetting anything? Do we want to give any other announcements? No? Okay. All right, welcome Adam Chau. Thank you for being here. We've been talking about this exhibition for, I think, over a year, and I'm just so excited that it's really here, and it's our first. It's so incredibly appropriate that it's our first in real life show since the shutdown, with all of us spending so much time in the digital world. Adam explores the digital world and how we communicate through it, and how people present themselves, images of themselves, and how we have this like new perception through these digital systems. And for sure, this idea of Zoom has given me a totally new perspective, because we see ourselves all the time while we're talking now, and that's like the ultimate in-person selfie at all times. So I think we'll have to talk about that at some point, but for now I just want to introduce you to Adam, who is incredibly vibrant artist. He was named an emerging artist for NCECA, the National Ceramics organization, in 2018, and that's a huge honor. We're just really excited for him to be here with us. He is formerly the education manager at the Clay Arts Center in Portchester, New York, and also the museum manager at the Hudson Valley MoCA. So very much involved in curation, thinking about what other people are doing in terms of art, as well as making his own, as I said, really vibrant art, which is incredibly important and of the moment. Adam has his degree in industrial design from the Art Institute of Chicago, and his studio practice looks at hybridizing digital technology with traditional craft practices. So it's really exciting to me. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm so happy to be here. I actually started coming to Philadelphia in 2010 or 11 for my first NCECA, and I am addicted to Philly, and I came to the Clay Studio all those years ago, and I've been impressed since, and I just love it down here. You know, I've set roots kind of in Westchester County, but I really do wish sometimes that I lived here.
One day, we're gonna get them down one day. So do you wanna show us around the gallery as a first, and then we can start talking about what each piece, how you made them, and what you're talking about?
Sure. So as a first peek, I will say I apologize. My computer needs to be plugged in, and it is attached to the wall. So I can't go completely into the gallery, but I can show you around. This is kind of as far as I can go. We can rotate. I have a series of 5 plates right here. They're about 12 inches long. And they also have a little bit of white gold luster. And we have a larger tile in the shape of a speech bubble. And I'm not sure, that's the farthest one away. I'm not sure if you can see that one, but these are online, and they are pictures of emojis. And then the big one, I have 90 tiles right here in 3 figures, with the center being a white gold luster tile that is reflective. And I can't get the computer to go right in front of that tile, but if you were to stand in front of it, you would see an image, a kind of blurred image of your face. So you could see a reflection of yourself. And these are pretty much life size. Like I said, 30 tiles each, so 90 tiles in a grid. And these are all made using a CNC machine, which stands for Computer Numeric Control. And I converted a milling machine into a painting machine. So there are a lot of videos that I have produced where you can see where I put a handmade brush into a robotic arm and it surfaces all of the porcelain that I use. And I will say that this larger piece right here, it's the first time that I've been able to find a way of making larger work because my CNC machine is about 18 inches wide by 20 inches deep. So I can only make a tile that size. And in thinking about making larger work, I found out that I can use a modular way of making. So each one of these phones, these tiles, this is the exact, oh, you can probably, can you guys see yourself? So you can like wave to yourself. This is the exact same size as an iPhone X. So I like to work with technology, both in process, but also hinting towards the shapes. I've used tiles in the shape of iPads, iMacs, and I'm really interested in the smartphone because it's handheld and it's so intimate. And something about that reminds me of a ceramic tile as well, because we look at a phone as a two-dimensional object. It's a screen, but it also occupies space. So the idea of 2D versus 3D, I think, is paralleled between digital tech and ceramics.
Well,
and you guys can just leave it back just for a little sneak peek of what I do. Because I fire everything flat, I don't have a hanging mechanism because it would warp the tile too much. So I PC7 a little D-ring onto it, and that works really well.
That's a good point about the connections between 2D and 3D and the sort of ceramic versus iPhone technology. And there's another connection between the cobalt that you use or sometimes use, right? In the
Yep. So if you guys have used cobalt, I'm sure you've wondered where it comes from. Everyone thinks that China has been the at the forefront of blue and white aesthetics. However, it actually came from the Middle East to China in order to create ceramic wares by demand from the West. And actually, right now, it's primarily mined in Congo. It's very unregulated, so it's a politicized material. And they use it in lithium ion batteries. So the battery in a smartphone, computer, or iPad, anything that has a rechargeable battery has cobalt in it. And I have extracted, not on these pieces, but I have in the past, I have taken iPhone cobalt to surface onto ceramics. But the toxicity level is a little high, so I don't do it often.
yeah, it's just so interesting to note that the similarities in the material, and as you're saying, there's just so many layers of political and social issues connected to those things.
And I will say, if you unwrap a iPhone battery and use that, it turns blue. It's the same stuff.
Wow. Well, and I think that there's yet another layer, isn't there? Because there's like an aftermarket for these technological objects and people are, paid very little to break them apart and pull out the precious materials.
It's the same thing with gold in electronics, the mining of old technology to get those resources back.
Yeah, very important. So I think we're going to go back and forth a little bit between talking about the current work and then sort of exploring your past. So I wanted to ask you about your early memories of being interested in art, and I know that your degree is in industrial design. So when do you remember kind of making these decisions to go into industrial design, and like how did you switch maybe, and when did you discover ceramics and feel passionate about that?
So I grew up in Connecticut, and my dad was the town baker. So my parents owned a bakery, and if anyone has baked before, you know the parallel between ceramics and baking. from weighing, mixing, baking, and even decorating. It's such a parallel. So when I got into high school and took my first ceramics class, I had already been trained. I was working at the bakery since the age of 9. So I already knew all of the hand skills. And it was just a very easy transition into creating artwork through that medium. And of course, I got a lot of praise for it, which made me happy. And I decided to pursue ceramics as a career. I do have a BFA in ceramics from Maine College of Art, and that kind of gave me a better foundation in craft and craft theory. But going back to the bakery, where it was a business and we were making, hundreds of cookies and dozens of cakes per day, and pastries and tarts and all of that, there was kind of this factory line and this idea that the multiple is kind of the end, and you had this process in order to make them. I wanted to pursue design in ceramics going forward. So I went to grad school knowing that I wanted to work in ceramics, but in an industrial way. And when I got there, I was introduced to all of this digital technology, and I learned that, technology, a lot of people think it's perfect, and, the mass factory line is just chugging out all these perfect items. And I got kind of disillusioned with the idea of perfection, especially around 2011 when I started to go to grad school. That was when the suicides occurred at Foxconn, which is Apple's company in China. It's a Taiwanese-based company, and the news broke that the working conditions in these factories to produce these, again, perfect objects were so inhumane. And I just felt like I could not participate in that kind of global economy, in that type of trade. So I bent my thesis to work with technology because I didn't want to leave the program. I still wanted to be, industrial design in ceramics, but I kind of bent the idea that this technology, this manufacturing method had to be perfect. So I started introducing handmade tools into these machines, and I got very spontaneous results. And I've continued that since 2013 is when I graduated. And I use different tools for the same toolpath to get different results. And I can show you a clear example. So my machine that I use, we have something called tolerance, which means if a machine does an action over and over again, what is the deviation of how much it repeats that line. And my machine has a tolerance of 0.02 millimeters. So if I tell it to draw a 12-inch line, it will always draw 12 inches within that 0.02 millimeter range. But if I use a handmade brush, I can get a drawing like this. But if I repeat the same exact line, the command, and use a different brush, I can get a radically different result. It's doing the exact same movements over and over, but the handmadeness of the tool gives me a different result. And to me, that's a metaphor for being an individual. So if all of you were trying to throw a cup and I told you to make it 4 inches tall and 4 inches wide, there would be such subtlety to the differences of the surface, and maybe it's a little bit taller, maybe it's a little bit shorter, the thickness would be different. And to me, it's not about escaping technology, it's working with technology to make smart objects. I want to work within the system in order to create change. I have friends that really believe that making handmade pottery with your hands is the way to go, and I think that's perfectly fine. But as a trained designer, I think it's my responsibility to also talk to designers about how they can make more human-made objects.
I love that you said working within the system to make change. I feel like that is
a universal statement that might be part of your kind of worldview that applies to other parts of your life.
Mm-hmm. And you can, as a historian, you know, the third wave of the arts and crafts movement, the Bauhaus movement of placing people into the factories with a very smart background in craft was this kind of idea that they would be making better objects within the industrial environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Marrying those two ideas was what would end up with a result that was both most beautiful and useful and also most affordable, because that was, right, that line between being able to make something where the artist or the maker was joyful, that the end user got something valuable, but that they could also afford it, that more people could afford it was so important. And I feel like that's still something that we're struggling with.
And I always use the term hybridized. I feel like I'm not either or. I'm not a designer. I'm not a traditional craftsman. I'm really trying to blend the two, because we can take, the good parts from both sides. Industrial design is efficient. It is cost effective. And being a potter or an artist using ceramics with their hands, there's just kind of a smarter way of the design and content. So marrying those two, I think, is important, not choosing either or.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that word hybridized is something that I think people can relate to these days. They sort of understand, because there's so much in our society that's trying to accomplish moving forward through combining ideas. In the mid-century as you're saying, sort of the Bauhaus was that's a great way to say the third wave of the arts and crafts movement. And then the concept of the designer craftsman was so prevalent in the middle of the century, which we never talk about that term now, or we never use that term, but it's that same idea. The word hybridized is certainly more elegant than designer craftsman, so we'll go with that. I think Raymond had a question. He asks if you ever work with glitch art, when the tech goes wrong and you get chance and randomness and loss of full agency.
So I actually think my practice is a type of glitch art where the tool is the thing that's glitching out the surfacing. So there are 4 main categories of digital manufacturing. There's input, CAD, CAM, and output. Input would be the information. CAD is the visualization. CAM, that's the most hard to describe. If you're typing on Microsoft Word, that is CAD. And if you want to print it to the printer, it needs to create binary code in order to know where all the little dots are going in the printer. That program is the CAM. It's the tooling. And then output would be your printer. I don't mess with my CAM to glitch out things, because I'm already getting a glitch. The glitch for me is the fact that I actually drew a knee here and drew a foot, but it didn't actually go on. So that's the glitch for me.
So it's the tool that you're creating, is the fact that it is handmade is the glitch. So that's really interesting.
Because what I found out in school as well is that when you are milling something, or when these industrial companies are using digital manufacturing, the tools are just as precise. If it is a 1/2 inch drill bit, it is literally 1/2 inch. It does not deviate from that. And then they actually use differential equations to take into consideration if the tool is eroding, how is, especially metal on metal, if you're milling metal and you're slowly eroding the tool, there is a way to calculate how much it's eroding and then to compensate for it. That's how detailed they get, and it's cool, but I'd rather just make a handmade brush.
Yeah, well, and that's the hybridization, which is great. Diana Chamberlain asks, is there a connection to Wabi-Sabi the Japanese idea that veering from perfection makes design more relatable. Is that something that rings true with you?
So I don't claim any bit of Wabi-Sabi only because that isn't my own history and I have not studied it effectively enough that I don't feel to be the authority on that. However, I do believe that perfect things are a little boring, and when things are a tiny bit off, when they're just I don't know if you guys know a robot that has a human face on it. If it's too perfect, it looks just like a little too weird. So if you put that little bit of imperfection in, it makes it more acceptable. Just like my eyes are not the same size or my eyebrows aren't always the same shape, right? It's a little bit off, which is why I actually choose to hand roll my tiles instead of slip casting them or instead of ram pressing them, because I don't want them too perfect. I want just the tiniest bit of wiggle, because I think that gives you a more human and emotional feeling to it. So I've decided not to make perfect tiles at all. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe from far away they look, ooh, I'm gonna lose battery soon. Ooh. Got like a 30-second window putting that plug in. Okay, so these, yeah, I don't know if you can see,
I think what
they
you can
look the same, but they're not, yeah, they're close enough.
I think you do get the sense that there's it's not distractingly off, but it's enough of like a tiny bit of an undulation of the surface that the light reflectivity is enhanced in a way that's really beautiful, because in addition to the luster that you're using, it gives it a shininess. And people, one of my most deep statements when I teach class is that people like shiny things.
Which is really funny because the shinier something is, the harder it is to photograph.
That's true. That's true. So I love that we're kind of going back and forth between your history and your early times with ceramics and the tool design. And then I'm interested for you to talk a little bit more specifically about the triptych and your desire to create that work and what you were thinking about apart from the making of it. You know, what is it that you're exploring through that idea of the selfie?
So when I first contacted the clay studio about a year ago about a year and a half ago is when Instagram actually changed their algorithm from a chronological order to more mixed. And that was the reason why they did that is so they can put in marketing and advertising within posts. And I all of a sudden found that I was being marketed to with queer men that were like had these perfect chiseled bodies, which at first I was like, okay, that's great. I don't mind seeing that. But I started noticing more and more people taking selfies of themselves where they were putting their phone in front of their face and it was obliterating their face, which made me think that if you're going to take a selfie, why would you cover your face up? And it was just an interesting investigation of me starting to see all of these things happen. And I wanted to make a comment on it where the selfie has become anonymous a little bit. It's very odd how people, I would say the millennial generation, which I'm a part of, kind of uses the internet to express themselves, but in very interesting ways or ways that I perhaps would not have thought of when I was a teenager. So I really wanted to investigate the idea of putting yourself out there, but also hiding yourself with this prop in front of your face. So the triptych that I made, you can't see the face. And what I've done is I've cataloged poses over the last year of all male identifying bodies with a phone in front of their face, and then I've retranslated their poses with myself because I don't want to use another body that I don't know. I don't want to, take someone else's story, but I think the poses in itself, I can adopt. So I've done that. And then another layer of it is that the phone is reflective. So you can see yourself also in the image.
Right, which is just such a wonderful physicality brought to the concept of, the person who's taking the picture is doing it for someone else, or to have that feedback and to sort of force the person who's being the voyeur to look at themselves and kind of like come to terms with what they're getting out of looking at that image as well. I mean, there's just so many layers of interchange between the person taking the picture and the viewer, and to go back and forth between those two. And you're like, are you sort of becoming the picture? Do you want to see yourself as that body, or
Well, in this piece right here, I don't know if you guys, where am I pointing? Right here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a very large, you can see it on the Clay Studios website, but
well, maybe I can pull that up.
it is actually pointing to her. I pointed directly to the mirror. So when you see the finished work, you see a hand entering the image and then reflected too. So it's actually a double image.
I'm going to bring this up to share the screen so people can see it a little bit more clearly. Yeah. So there's that image where Adam's talking about the finger is touching the mirror, so that it's yet another way that the viewer is brought in to be an immediate actor in this interchange.
Yes, so I really want to work with just how we view ourselves, and also then how you view other people within that context. And that one actually, it's called Bunny Face, and I think a lot of people, we all know, I'm pretty sure there are no like teenagers in here, is that the way we use technology is different than a younger generation. And I started noticing a lot of people putting filters on their face, and there are filters where you can turn your face into a bunny. And I just thought it was so interesting how people want to kind of change features through technology as well. It's changing your identity. For me, this is a little tongue-in-cheek, where I'm a rabbit, but you can also change the color of your eyes, for example, on Instagram. And I do want to challenge, what does that say about reality versus the digital? How do you want to present yourself? And is that problematic?
And in a way, that filter, that bunny face, is serving maybe the same purpose as putting the phone in front of your face. You're obliterating your real self.
Yep.
In a way, yeah. Gosh. Okay. Let's see. There's another question. Raymond says also the way that phones allow for mirror selfies versus normal selfies. Yeah. And that's another thing with Zoom that I didn't realize at first, that the picture that you see of yourself is a mirror image, but the picture you see of other people is not a mirror image. Because I was like holding up a book and it was backwards, and so I thought, oh, everybody sees this backwards, and then they see it. Oh, anyway, all these things we're learning about technology.
I will say it's very odd to see yourself the way other people see you. It's kind of crazy if you hold, I'm sure two mirrors up to see your true face. It's very, I always get shocked.
Yeah, just seeing the, whatever you're used to on your face being our asymmetry reversed. Because as we were just saying, we're not perfect. So seeing those imperfections reversed is kind of strange. I want to go back for a second to your idea about working within the system to make change, and relate that back to the fact that as a successful artist, you're also a successful curator and arts administrator. Do you feel that's another hybridization in a way? And what do you feel like you've learned maybe something that you wouldn't know if you hadn't stepped to the other side of that table?
Yeah, I think being an arts administrator has taught me a lot about giving voice to when my voice is appropriate versus when someone else's voice is appropriate. I mean, you probably know that as well, being a curator. It's interesting to know when to hold back on content or when you should, include other people at the table. I think we're in a moment right now where we're realizing this, just in globally. And being a curator also is knowing when to not be a curator. I organized a show at Clay Art Center about 2 years ago, and I wanted to touch themes on marginality, being marginalized as an artist, but I felt like I could not bring the expertise to it. So I invited, even though I was, resident curator or whatever, I invited Roberta Lugo to curate the show. So stepping away so someone else can step in to that position of power, I thought was a very good learning experience. And that has made me as an artist not think that I need to, get every opportunity and, win every award, and, there's space for everyone. And to not think that I'm like the hottest thing in the world, and to be okay with that and share the love.
Well, I mean, I do think you're pretty great, but I can also see the value. I think it's really nice to talk about the value in a high tide rising all boats. Sharing the spotlight with people will often, just by the fact that you're being generous, is gonna come back to you in a different way.
For example, actually, this is a clearer example, is that in 2017, I curated a show called Reinvented, which was at the Clay Studio, and it dealt with the hybridization of digital technology and studio ceramics. And I cannot speak for the whole, movement of digital handmade. So it was important in my practice as a digitally based artist to show those other voices that are contributing to the field. And I thought that was widely successful to show the breadth, because I should not be the sole person speaking about this issue of digital technology within craft.
Well, and you're the perfect person.
No one single person can be.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a delay, so sometimes I think I talk over you. I apologize. I think that it also is that you're the perfect person who's working within this, because you can see how other people are doing it. And because you have that knowledge base, you can really identify the other artists who are working with that, and to raise their voices. It's just going to raise the discourse about that topic, which is going to be really beneficial to the whole field in the long run. I do think that that's also an interesting concept in terms of sharing the spotlight and hearing the voices when you realize that you're not the expert. But it doesn't mean that no one should be treated as an expert. It just means that we should all be realizing expertise in each other and how it's different across. Yeah, that's really great. So I want to talk about, it's hard to see, but we have the fruit against the wall. So let's maybe, I think if you get a tiny bit closer, that glare will, oh, you'll bring them to us. Great. And I love the little changes you made with these to kind of indicate them as iPhones in a different way than you did with the others.
So these have a mother of pearl luster. It's a little subtle. It's more obvious when you're in the space, but you can kind of see right here. It does mimic an iPhone or a smartphone having a little earpiece. And I will say, when in 2018, I was making tiles based off of the current iPhone or the past iPhone with the hole, and I would puncture a hole straight through the tile. And when Apple got rid of that, I had so much anxiety. Like, how are you going to know it's a phone then if I make these tiles in the same shape? So I was lamenting over having the hole at the bottom, but I've discovered by putting this little notch right here, that's just enough of a clue. But I didn't make, these are not machined, these are handmade, they're hand painted. just because I wanted a little bit more shading, and I wanted to talk about this idea that I think language in technology is changing to a more pictorial kind of way of talking through emojis.
Mm.
And if we look at the written language, we see a lot of, like, Mandarin, for example, was a pictogram first before it became abstracted so much into its own language. And I think we're kind of reverting into using emojis as a communication tool. So the aubergine, for example, can be coded in many different ways. You can read it in many different ways. And I'm interested in how technology is changing visual language and literally language, the written word. So I did make these 3 pieces. It's emoji, banana, or sorry, eggplant, banana, and peach right here.
Yeah. And then the
Because they're double entendres, but there are many other emojis out there. I mean, I use the kissy face a lot.
and it does start to as you're saying, it's our language is becoming hybridized with the use of these, and also just the abbreviated language that we use in texting. And in fact, I think that the emoji and other images are inserting a humanity back into something that was getting very close to code and computer language in like the acronym usage. And
Well, I think what's also interesting, just in this month, I've seen people use the fist emoji in multi-toned kind of a strip, and that's the kind of the first time I've seen a symbol come up, an emoji symbol that's multiple. But I see so many people using it, and it's on my way to Philadelphia. There was a huge billboard, probably 30 feet long, and it had just five fists in different skin tones.
Oh.
And that's our new language.
Right, and everybody understands that. Well, most people, I guess, understand what that means, and the fact that you can, choose the skin tones of your different. I mean, even if you use the mermaid or the fairy emoji, I've noticed you can change their skin tone and their hair color, or choose, I should say, those things. And so again, hybridization, you're drawn to that line between things, which is so fascinating. I know this isn't really fair, but I'm going to ask you that hated question by artists, which is what's next? So you've just gotten this up on the wall. Have you started thinking about what you're doing next?
Well, I think I've always straddled the challenge of creating work that is engaging when you see it versus putting value on the process. I have not shown you guys any video of how I made this work, and I think it ebbs and flows, showing the process versus not showing the process. So I think I'm going to start kind of ideating how I can incorporate the information of how I make all of the work into my installations or when I exhibit next. Because it is fun to see I have like over 200 brushes that I use for my machine, and I do record videos from time to time to them. So I think what's next is kind of learning how to present that information to the public.
Yeah, and we talked about that yesterday, sort of that idea of whether you should include the different brushes so that you're really making it clear to the audience why these tiles look different. But if you choose to do
making bigger, like this is brand new work, and I've just figured out how to make bigger pieces. So expect large tile.
Yeah, you could cover the side of a building. Do you want to talk about that? Actually, I don't think we've explained to this audience how you got your drawing onto 30 tiles.
So what I do is I take a photograph, and then I use Rhinoceros, which is a 3D modeling software, and I trace the outline over it, but I do it in a way on a tablet, so I am hand drawing myself. And then I take that big image, and then I have a kind of like, imagine a cookie cutter. So I take this cookie cutter outline and I cut the image 30 times in order to get a single kind of chunk. And so I've got two examples. So then the computer knows to only draw this line, and this is my forearm right here. And this is the tile next to it, C4, C5. So like that, it's like this. So the phone is up here. This is the beginning of my palm. So what I love about using this machine is that if I could not do this by hand, I could not figure out how to span this one line to then go here in such an exact way where I can become anatomically correct. So I do see the benefit of using digital technology. I'm not just using it to make a point, it's to make anatomically correct figures and to make that kind of, that to me would be extremely hard to get that kind of joint correct. So I stamp, I use like again, this outline, stamp everything, and then this is probably a 2-second print on my machine. I put the code into the machine and it dips into Cobalt in 2 seconds. So it is very efficient as well. And that's how I do it. And they are done one at a time. I don't like put 4 together. I think that it just gets a little too messy and complicated that way.
So you're sort of putting in like, okay, this is tile A4, and you put that into the computer, and then you put the tile C4.
They are 6. It is 5 across by 6 down. So I go A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, and I go all the way down.
So that's what you're inputting that into the machine, the computer, basically, have it do the right thing.
Yep. So it takes a lot of, I generally find my process to be similar to slip casting, where you put all your energy up front in like making the mold or the prototype, or all of the energy is there. And then the actual making part of it is quite simple and easy to do and fast.
Yeah. Well, once you have the skill, once you understand the system, right, then it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to think about it. So we'll look for more ideas about lines between 2 different ideas, and we'll look for larger things. And I think that idea of sort of emphasizing what is possible through the technology, as you're saying, like, well, what's the point in using the technology for this purpose? And maybe kind of leading into that a little bit with the size expansion, et cetera. So exciting. And I'm so happy that people can, just starting in a few days, I guess maybe 10 days or so, to come in person and really be able to experience art in person again, because these are so beautiful. They deserve to have people standing in front of them. The concept of the piece that you are looking at is so emphasized when you're in person there looking at it. And again, anyone who's in the audience who wants to come in before that, just go ahead and email me and we can come up with some dates. I'm going to ask if anyone has other questions. I see Raymond says, maybe somehow involving a visitor with a production process in an exhibit would help to convey and connect the idea of production in future works. That's interesting.
Yeah, I've thought of actually having my CNC on loan at the space. The only thing is I have one of them, so I can't work then.
I like the idea that your work can function in this situation and in the other, more expletive kind of environment as well. So I think that that's great that you can explore both of those avenues. Anybody else have questions or any comments that they want to leave us with? We'll go ahead and put it back on gallery view so we can see everyone. You can unmute yourself or type it into the chat, whatever you would prefer. Just give everybody a minute. I feel a little bit like we're coming back to cookies as well, because you were talking about slip casting and cookie cutter. Maybe it's just because it's noon and I'm hungry, but.
I also just like I said in the beginning, the parallels between baking and ceramics is quite tight. Like my rolling pin is specifically a baking rolling pin. My stamp, so I stamp it. And I'll tell you the secret. That's a cookie stamp.
A cookie stamp. Great.
It's from a cookie stamp. I go to my dad's bakery and I just like take whatever I need back in the studio.
Yeah, and are you what are you cooking or baking at home? Do you still baking a lot?
We're baking. So my husband bakes sourdough. He's been kind of perfecting his recipe for a couple of years. And now, so it's not baking, but we really want to start making kombucha just because it seems next level.
Yeah.
So other than that, what am I cooking too? We've been making a lot of Vietnamese spring rolls. And that's been very nice.
I tried that the other day, and those wrappers are sticky. I definitely need more practice. Maybe you have some tips.
It's really warm water, and the quality actually varies as well. So you need a good quality brand.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. I think Teddy has something he wants to say.
Well, I have your laser cut sourdough recipe with me.
Whoa.
So this is
More digital technology.
We just got a laser cutter, and our first project was to laser cut a postcard with our sourdough recipe in the silhouette of a loaf.
Very nice.
I think this is the purest, most wholesome embodiment of what the quarantine has done to us. I think everything's downhill from here.
After the bread. We can all.
And I will say, actually, this is, we did that exactly with the same process I did. So we drew, we sketched out a sourdough loaf. We took a picture, and then in Rhinoceros, so it's kind of really tripping my mind right now that I'm making the connection that I just did what I do for ceramics to paper.
Yeah. Another hybridization in the future. Kel B says, I missed part of the beginning, so I'm not sure if you already covered this. Have you ever considered representing written screen text in your work?
Written screen text. So yes, actually in 2018, when I was an NCECA Emerging Artist, I presented 12 tiles that were in the shape of iPhones with the hole, and I hand wrote personal messages to all of my ex-lovers as text messages. I don't have any of their context, so it was just kind of, if I had their context, what would I message them? And that was drawing a parallel between thinking of the text message as the 21st century love letter, or having a text message be so intimate that it can cause such emotion. Because at the time, remember when text messaging first came out, there were kind of older generations where, yes, so that is handwritten in white gold. And everyone was saying, you're not being social, like stop being on the phone. And my point is that text messaging is a connection with another person. You're just not physically seeing it. So I do handwritten text messages a lot.
And I love that your fingerprints, because it's such a part of our phones that we don't really talk about, but there's always fingerprints as part of the.
Yep. Tapping. So I'll also say there was it's kind of a double meaning with that, where that you can tap on a phone. So that was supposed to be emotion, but you can also read it as tears on a page because they were circles. They were small circles and kind of random dots. So I wanted a parallel meaning. I wanted a double meaning with that.
Oh, I didn't get the tears. Got it now. Okay. Diana asks if you plan to do commissioned work.
So I have done commissioned work before. It does take a little bit of time. Here's the kicker is, even I don't know what I'm going to get if I like draw someone's face. I don't know. I didn't predict that. I can't predict. I can get close anatomically correct. Features will come out, but so it's hard to convince people that if I have a photo of them, that it will come out exactly the way they want it. There is this kind of gamble. And I like it. I personally like the gamble. I like it when it doesn't touch in certain areas, but some people are too much of a control freak to let that go.
Yeah,
So
you
like
have to.
sometimes I'm missing a whole face, like a whole eye or eyebrow doesn't touch. But I like that. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, you have to embrace the process. And and Diana says on like in a large scale public space, I think we should definitely start exploring that. I'm excited about that concept.
So everyone has told me that the next step should be something more like on architecture, and that loops in kind of Howard Rosati's thinking through craft of tile only being activated when it's on the wall. And if you have a wall for me, I'll do it. You know, I just haven't found that wall yet.
Yeah, we need to think about that. And then Kel says, thank you for the screen image of the written iPhone message. I love it. And for the response, I love the thwarting of received or conventional binaries and meanings in your response to this question and in your work more generally. Thank you. That's nice. I do want to mention, thank you, Raymond, for reminding me that Adam's idea for the show has always included a parallel workshop that we are presenting for LGBTQ+ youth who, for the purpose of exploring identity through art making, and Adam serving as a mentor to that group. So we're working with The Attic, which is an organization here in Philadelphia that provides services for LGBTQ+ youth from 14 to 23. And he's created tile kits, selfie kits for each of the participants, and we're gonna do that. So I don't know if Adam, do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I thought I really believe in being multi-generational with discourse. I think it's, sometimes, my circle of who I talk to, we're all the same age, or it's not, I want to break it up a little bit more. So because technology is changing so quickly, the early adopters are our youth, and they are exploring so much about what the internet can provide for them. I thought it was important to bring up some of these issues that I'm seeing about identity and being anonymous versus being not anonymous versus showing your true self versus not. So I really wanted to have youth consider that by creating a self-portrait on a porcelain phone, and we are going to be using blue and white to create selfies, and the title of the program is Love Your Selfie. And I just couldn't be more excited to kind of teach and then talk about how the internet has changed the queer community, because I was right on the cusp of getting this technology. I got my first cell phone when I was 18. So I know, I'm right in the middle. So I'm interested in kind of having the conversation of what life was like for gay activists and gay artists before the internet. What did they do in order to rally around themselves? How did they find their community versus today, where it is a little bit easier to find community outside of your geography? So I want to have that discussion so we can all kind of explore what it was like and what it could be.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I myself, and maybe some other people in this group, might not mind having their own selfie workshop. Maybe we'll think about doing an adult one in the future. I think that'd be fun. I'm so happy and pleased and honored that Adam has chosen to have his exhibition here, and then he's doing this work with us, and that we've had a chance to talk today with our community and to learn more about your process and your concept. And I'm just so excited about that and everything. And again, so pleased that it's our first real exhibition as we're coming back. So thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And thank you to all of you. Again, please do come visit us in a couple of weeks. This program will be available if you want to share it with anyone who wasn't available to be here with us today. It'll be up on the website in a few days. Do come visit us again next week for our Lunch and Learn, and be well and find your moments of joy as you go through your days. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Actually, Raymond, one thing I didn't, sometimes I've switched them. I didn't look at the back and like switch the codes. So just thinking about glitching, sometimes I accidentally like switch tiles together and it's like, what's happening with my body? What's happening? Like,
That's great.
my elbow where my shoulder should be.
Yeah, that's a good example, all right?
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Signing off. Have a good day.
Bye, this was great.